Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus and today I'm going to start my playthrough of GMT's Prime Minister, a game that thematically is really right down my alley. So when I heard about it, I really wanted to get myself a copy, and I was lucky enough to get one at my friendly local game store. The game comes with a normal multiplayer set of rules. It also comes with solo rules, which is the so-called Clockwork rulebook. The Clockwork rulebook consists of two solo modes. So there's the Clockwork System I and the, let's say, somewhat more sophisticated Clockwork Mode 2. On top of this, there are also various scenarios here in the book, and as usual you get a lot of let's say examples of the gameplay. But honestly, I do think the game is relatively straightforward once you get behind some of the ideas. I only played the Clockwork Mode once, Clockwork Mode 1 once basically, and lost miserably. I think I really lost my very first election. Was a little bit unfortunate because I felt prepared, but anyway, I went down, and that's basically what I'm going to do today. I will play a session of Clockwork System or Clockwork Mode 1, where you pretty much automatically lose if you lose your role as the Prime Minister of Great Britain. That is, your goal is to reach 100 victory points, but quite honestly, I don't think I'm going to make that. There are also varying, let's say, levels of difficulty, and because I have no clue what I'm doing here, I decided to play against Rosebery as my opposition, but as the opposition leader for our party. He is a liberal politician, so I really chose the side randomly. I also chose the politician randomly, basically who I'm going to play, but that's who I'm playing against during this session, Rosebery. They always follow the same logic, so you can somewhat plan ahead, but don't expect me to do that particularly well. I'm really trying to survive here. And on our side, the Conservatives, I'm going to play as Benjamin Disraeli. Hopefully I'm not butchering his name. These are of course all historical figures, which obviously I have no clue about. I have no clue about the election systems during the Victorian era, quite honestly, but still I'm enjoying this a big deal. We have a backup Prime Minister who would be the Earl of Aberdeen. So basically, before we are getting challenged, and that's a step in every game round, we can decide pretty much to switch positions, and we are more or less ditching Benjamin Disraeli and then taking over the role of the Earl of Aberdeen, just to buy us some more time. I think we will lose some standing or so, and my opponent will gain some victory points, but apart from that, it pretty much gives us our standing back, because whenever we are losing standing and the standing of our opposition leader is higher than us, he's going to challenge us. There are other rules in respect to where we stand on the favor track against our Royal Majesty here, Queen Victoria. Right now we are starting all at 1, but we already see that here that's pretty much the first thing that he will do during any given round. He is going to flatter Her Royal Majesty, gaining him some more favor. And basically, when I think we are tied there and tied here, or he's higher here, then he's going to challenge us. And in this case, we are also immediately lose the game. So once we are no longer Prime Minister, we have lost the game. And again, our goal is to move the blue marker, which is currently here on 0, all the way up to 100 in order to win that. In between, we are trying to pass bills, hopefully in our favor, so those will be down here. And in between, we are also trying to influence these so-called sectors. So we have the Conservatives, the farm, the gentry, Scotland, workers, Ireland, you name it, in order to ultimately tweak the election projections here in our favor, in order to make it through another round of being Prime Minister. In between, we have also events, we can play supporters, we have to deal with uncertainty during these elections and bills and whatnot. So I think you will definitely experience a lot of cool stuff. And I think with that being said, as usual, I'm not going to explain you the rules in advance. I will teach you most of it as I play. Though definitely learn from my mistakes. I will most certainly make some rule scoofs. If so, let me know, and I will try to whatever leave a Klingon subtitle, or maybe if I catch it during editing, I will leave a note there as well. And before I forget, a huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members. You guys are truly amazing. And yeah, with that being said, I guess we can more or less get into the game. So we have our parliamentary order we will set up for the round. We will skip through phases 1A because we are not gaining any victory points. So every start of the round, as long as we are Prime Minister, we are getting 4 victory points. Our opponent's getting 2 victory points. In this Clockwork Mode 1, the victory points really do not matter for our opponent, for the opposition leader. We are only worrying about not losing our job as Prime Minister and making it to 100 points. Let's say that victory point tracker for the other side simply gives you an idea how well you're doing in this mode. In Clockwork Mode 2, from what I understood, yes, it does definitely matter. So you really want to be better than the opposition. But in the Clockwork Mode 2, there is also very likely that you will lose a job as the Prime Minister. Well, then you can keep playing as the opposition, which is then more or less simulating the full game. Let's put it like this. So we are skipping over 1A. We will definitely do 1B, where we are taking our action cube income. So we are checking our standing here in the parliament. We will always get 2 action cubes. We start the game on position 11, which isn't terrible. So it seems public has some good faith in us. But because we are above 8, our standing, we're getting a 3rd action cube. If we would ever make it onto 13 or 14, we will even get a 4th cube, but let's not count on it. So that's the victory point, no victory point, the action cube income for us. It works pretty similarly for the opposition leader, which in this case, again, it's Roseberry, but he starts on 5, so he's only quote-unquote getting 2 action cubes. If he ever makes it to 8 or more, he will also collect a 3rd action cube, but I'm pretty sure as soon as this happens, we are really in a tough spot. But okay, this was the setup for the round. Now we are taking the build selections. And here it's very clear, if no builds are on the board, the Prime Minister draws 6 builds, then selects 3 to place on the board. Right now, because we just started the game, there aren't any builds here on the board. So we have select 6 of those. We can either go for conservative builds. Again, we are playing the Conservative Party randomly, or we can choose cross-party builds. We can draw cards and then decide from which pile we are drawing next. And if you happen to know the game, you might have noticed that I'm using this overlay here. This overlay is not something in particular for the solo mode. This is simply giving you, let's say, a somewhat better... You don't have to math out too much of what these builds or when these builds are going to make it. Normally you would basically place them here and then you have a +20 or +10, and then in your head you have to then do the math in respect to how your government, members of parliament is being separated. So right now we are starting the game with 330 members of parliament, which is not great. We have 270 moderates and we have 60 partisans. And these builds will be successful based on either, let's say, your overall seats in parliament or your members of parliament, or by either of one of those moderates or partisans. Right now we don't really have an awful lot of partisans, so I think we will focus on the all or moderate builds at this point in time. The partisans seem to be a little bit stronger, but again, what I'm trying to say is this overlay makes this whole arithmetic a little bit more or less challenging, at least for me, right? I'm mathematically challenged. Let's face it. Okay, so that's basically what we are going to do next. So we are drawing 6 and we have to choose 3 of those. Let's definitely start with a conservative build because they tend to give us victory points rather than the cross-party builds who are giving both of us victory points, which again in this Clockwork Mode 1 is not too bad, but yeah, they also come with somewhat more stronger effects and they give us more victory points, simple as that. So here we have the Prisons Act, which is an act to centralize control of prisons. As a vote projection or as a success projection, we have a -30. So it seems that our conservatives are not so eager for this Prisons Act because, again, we are losing 30 from our all category. And keep in mind, in total, we currently have 330 seats in the parliament, and if we would subtract 30 of those, and we need, I believe, at least 330 to make it, to make this bill happen, basically, we are losing already 30 for this bill here alone. We can definitely work on that, and I think it's not out of reach. We would gain 4 points of this, but we would also be, let's say, dealing with the influences here. The blue ribbon here is basically us, the Conservative Party. So if this law or bill is passing, we will lose in Ireland and with the worker one standing, and the Liberals will gain some standing with the Liberals. So we get some victory points, a little bit more than with other cards, but we are also changing the control in the parliament, or for the vote projections, not necessarily in our favor. And that's what I happen to observe. These Conservative Party bills really come with some detrimental effects down here, but still you want to gain victory points in the end. But we don't have to decide right now. Let's draw another Conservative bill right now. That's the Royal Titles Act. An act to enable Her Majesty to take the title Empress of India. It's a similar difficulty level, let's put it like this. So we have to really work on this. We would only gain 3 victory points, but if we make this bill pass, we will get 1 favor with the Queen. Of course, she is amused by that. We would still lose some influence with the Liberals, and the M is the middle class, which again is usually not a great thing, but it's a maybe, because again we are gaining some favor, which usually is a good thing. But against Rosebery it will be tough anyway to win that battle about the Queen's favor. So let's continue to draw maybe a cross-party bill for now, because again that's a maybe. We can only choose 3 of those, keep that in mind. And here we have the Weights and Measures Act, an act for preserving the standards of weight and measures. So we would basically, this is the same for these cross-party bills, so they work for both sides. But again, in this clockwork mode, giving the other player or the opposition victory points doesn't really matter. But we are only getting 2, and in theory, let's call it some kind of a race, because the chances are that we are losing, let's say, the job of prime ministers are relatively high. So the faster you move, the better it is. So there, 4 victory points over 2 victory points is beneficial. But it's definitely much easier. We are getting a plus 30. So it's not unlikely we are going to make that. So I think that's definitely, but they work all pretty similarly actually. But for now, we will definitely leave that. We will draw another cross-party bill, because that's a good one. Okay. That's a very, very cool one actually. Super tasty, the Crowned Game Act, an act to allow farmers to kill rabbits and hares. Here the moderates in our party are, let's say, somewhat supportive of that, so we get a plus 20. We are currently at 270, so we would be at 270 and at 290, and keep in mind we need 330 votes in order to make that bill pass. On top of this, we're getting some victory points, but we're getting 2 favor, 2 standing for the farmers and 1 with the workers. I mean, that's really a huge thing. So these 2 work pretty well for us, but here we still have to work on that. But I think actually against Rosebery, it's not easy. It's not easy. He will always work against that for sure. It's 3 victory points. Yeah, that's pretty tasty. So let's continue to draw. We still get to draw 2 more cards before we get to decide. So I think we have 2 okay ones here. This is also okay-ish. So let's draw another Conservative Party bill. And that's a nice one, the Small Holdings Act. It's only 2 victory points, and it's an act to help tenant farmers purchase their own land. The farmers would go up, gentry would go down. Yes, this does make sense. And for the Liberals, the gentry would go up instead. There we have to see how many votes. That's a vote swing of 4 basically. That's not nothing, but for the farmers we are getting 2. So it's only a vote swing of 2. And I think for the gentry, no, we can't really work with the gentry. That's a problem. So I think this is a cool, tasty one. It will, more or less all in our party will be in favor. So we have 330 votes, but the impact is relatively tough, I believe. But because I have 2 cross-party bills that work nicely for me, I think for my last card I will go for, and I want 1 conservative bill out, I believe, at least. Maybe that's an error. Maybe I shouldn't do that, but let's try that anyway. So here we have the Party Possessions Act. And again, I'm really not experienced in this game. I don't know all the bills or the majority of those bills. I don't know the uncertainty cards. So this might be a short playthrough. Let's put it like this. Yeah, and that's a very tasty one. 6 victory points in actor restrain assemblies and marches in Ireland. But this only is basically supported by our partisans. And again, right now we only have 60 partisans. So we get a plus 30. This would drive it to 90. But from 90 all the way up to 330 in order to make this build pass, that's really not very realistic. Yeah, I think we can basically forget those. So now from these 6 we have to make a pick. So I will definitely go with the weights and measures act here. Again, we get an all plus 30. Our all, so we're going to 360 points, which is already a bill which our opponent Roseberry will never going to attack because it's outside of his attack range, but we get to that. Then we will also go for the Crowned Game Act. This is really huge. So this is basically being steered by our moderates. We have 290. So that's a maybe in this case. And now for the tough part, for the third bill. We don't have a third cross-party bill, so we will have to go with one of those. I think because here we get this one here, but it's only 3 victory points. Here we get 4 victory points, but it's basically the same difficulty, but the +1 here could be nice. Again, on the other hand, no, I think it's good. Let's go with the Royal Titles Act. There is a very big chance that we are not going to make it, but let's see what our supporters will say. And all the others will basically go to, I think, a discard pile. And as long as we are not passing these bills, they could come back later in the game, and we could then still, because then political landscape has changed, right? So that was the build step, the build selection of the parliamentary order. And again, I will promise you things will definitely speed up from at least round 2. So now we will come to the action turns. We will always start with the opposition leader, place the politician and supporter actions. Right now our opposition leader Roseberry doesn't have any supporter cards, so we will skip over that. We are now going to play our opposition leader action cubes. Keep in mind, he currently has 2 cubes, and this is the first cube, this is the second cube, this is the third cube. We will always start at the top and see if it's possible or non-futile. And if they're futile, we will move down and whatever trigger the next best thing. So in this case, we will take our first cube in here. And here the action says that he's going to gain 2 extra favor with Queen Victoria. It would be futile for him if he would be, I think, 3 in the lead. Right now we are all tied down here, so he's definitely taking that action. So he's getting 1 and 2 standing with the queen. That's already his first action done. This doesn't do anything to us. Of course, we want her favor on our side because there are some possibilities for a minority party or prime minister role, basically, if we are in the favor of our queen, so she can really put her foot down. But right now that's not going to happen. And against Roseberry, very unlikely, I think. We still have our second cube, which we will place up here. We will check the very first one here. Here he's trying to meddle with our builds, and we also have to check the attack range. He's only going to attack builds that are in the attack range of currently 300 to 350 votes, basically from a projection perspective. And again, keep in mind, this is simulating that anything that's already way past done, so it's more or less carved in stone that is happening. He's not worrying about that too much. And similarly, if there is a law that's below that threshold, he's also saying, let's not worry about that. So I think in this case, the only one he can do, and I think here we forgot something, this should be exactly on 300. Exactly. It was also 330 all government seats or members of parliament, minus 30 is 300. So again, he doesn't care about the 360 because that's outside of his attack range. He hits 290, same thing, which means he is definitely attacking the Royal Titles Act. If there would be a tie, there's a tiebreaker rule as well. But in this case, it's clear as day. He is driving this law down to 290. So making it more challenging for us to making it over the, let's call it magical threshold of 320, because we are drawing uncertainty cards, and in 1 in 6 chances 320 votes would be enough to make it there. Because ultimately there are some uncertainty cards which would give us, I think they range from up to 10 or so, maybe 12, can't quite remember, but 1 in 6 chance on 320 that we will pass that bill. But yeah, those were his 2 actions for this round. You really see it's a very straightforward system. Things get a little bit more spicy when you play with Clockwork System II, where he could be not the opposition leader, but really the prime minister. In this case, of course, he's also doing more and more stuff similar to us. I think there's also something how he's defining the bills and whatnot. But again, in this very first mode of the game, things are really, really clear, and I really do appreciate an easy to follow AI mechanic. Now it's over to us as the Prime Minister. Prime Minister draws and resolves an event or clockwork event. Again, clockwork event not going to happen because there can be only us being the Prime Minister. So we're drawing our very first event card. They come in 2 flavors. Let's just flip it over, and yes, that's the, let's call it the standard mode. Or the standard event for the majority. I think vast majority of those are historical events that could have happened during that time, not necessarily really real life events that happened. So we have an American sees British ship. So we can simply ignore that by not spending any of our action cubes. In this case, our standing at the parliament would drop down by 1, which is still okay. We could write an angry letter to our American friends. So this would cost us 1 of our 3 precious action cubes with no effects. No ill effects, but also no good effects. Or we could prepare for war by spending 2 of our action cubes, and then we would be gaining 1 standing. I think standing right now is not our prime concern. I also don't necessarily want to lose that, because I will also lose standing potentially when I will not pass a bill, or when I can cancel a bill. In this case, I would be losing standing. So I think I'm going to spend 1 of my precious action cubes to write an angry letter. And in this case, we are not suffering any ill or again beneficial effects in this case. So we have dealt with our event. This card is going to be discarded. This action cube is gone. And then we are moving over to our actions. We have now 2 action cubes left. Each of these actions, campaign, debate, flatter, hobnob or influence, is something that would cost us 1 influence cube. We can take the same action multiple times during our turn. We are still being limited by our personality, Benjamin Disraeli here. So we can only campaign, debate, flatter and hobnob. So we are not able to do the influence action. I just see that now. It's basically the same thing here. Also, our backup Prime Minister, the Earl of Aberdeen, is not able to do the influence action. Influence basically says we can transform moderates into partisans and the other way around, which will then usually help us in some of the more, let's say in the moderates laws, for example. That would help us to make it. So let's take this ground game act here. They're only being, let's say, supported by our moderates. So here the influence action would help us to transform partisans into moderates, which would then automatically give us 10 more votes, for example, for this bill to pass. Right now we are at 290, and I think this is really one we are trying to make. But again, that's an action we will never see from our side, at least for the Earl of Aberdeen, and I think even our opponent doesn't use this action, so we can basically ignore that. But the game comes with 5 politicians on each side. For the Clockwork politicians, they range from 1 to 3 stars, and again, depending on the difficulty level, they will do more and more harmful stuff to you. So again, we are down to the top 4 actions here, and we have basically a specialty. So we are particularly well suited to do some hobnobbing here, gaining more supporters. We have that on level 2, which doesn't give us 2 supporters, but we get to draw 2 supporters and pick 1, which I think is a cool thing. So we are going to do that because these supporters can be quite powerful. So let's draw our 2 supporters. So we have W.M. Thackeray, an author. Oh, Mary Shelley, yeah, of course, Frankenstein, right? And of course, the whole style, the whole artwork in this game is really top-notch. Can't really tell you how much I'm really being sucked into the theme here. Really nicely done. Okay, so what can we do? With this supporter Thackeray, we can basically drop down the hand means we can get to pick any one side, any one party. So in this case, of course, we would be picking the Liberal Party. So they would go on the Liberal track one step down. So they would be losing some votes, which I think is good actually, because they would be losing 3, or on the farmer side. Or we could say, in this case, we get to pick one side. In this case, this would be the Liberals. Or we could go on this side. So our Liberals would go up 2 steps, but we would be losing some steps with the middle class. So let's have a quick look at these sectors here. So if we would gain 2 steps in the Liberals, we would basically move from 0 to 2, from 2 to 4. So in total, we would be gaining 4 votes in our vote projection, which I think is already a good start, but we would be losing basically 1 step in the middle class. So that's what Mary Shelley is telling us here. So we would be losing 2 steps. So in total, we would be netting 2 votes for that, which again is not terrible. The problem really is now with those Liberals here, they never give us partisans. So the conservative parties, you will never see any partisans for the Liberal side of our party, right? Which I think kind of makes sense to some extent. So even though we are gaining 2 steps in the Liberals, this is not particularly well. So I think in this case, we might be opting to go with W.M. Thackeray, also an author, for this card, and we get to choose when we are going to play that card. Right now it's good because they would be losing 3 steps, which is I think a good thing, but we can still wait when it really does matter, because these sectors here only influence the actual election, never the bill, so we can still hold on to that. So yeah, let's keep hold on of Thackeray, and we can I think carry over 4 supporters from one round to the next. Unfortunately, Mary Shelley has to be discarded, even though she really comes with a very strong effect. That was our very first action done. And when you play alone, this game is really moving ultra fast like this, right? So I guess we need to, should we debate? We can debate, right? Indeed. We can also campaign, but we can only campaign with the conservatives, with the middle class, and with the workers, it seems. So all the other sectors we cannot directly influence, but there the supporters come into picture. They could give us also, let's say, abilities that our Prime Minister doesn't have, but the supporters can help you in that regard. And I'm still thinking about driving up that track here for the moderates, the Ground Game Act. We can basically, with this action, we get a +10 on any one of those bills. The problem is if we would bring it now to 300, the round one, the round cylinder, I think I'm relatively certain that Roseberry will basically bring it back down again with its very next action. So I think this could be kind of a moot action. So I could debate now to either go for another supporter hobnob action and hope for a stronger effect, or we are going to campaign and really start our way up, maybe with the conservatives from 6 to 8. The next step would then be cool from 8 to 11. But we are also increasing our partisans, which again is never a bad thing. And the conservatives can only gain partisans. You see that here from the conservatives, the farmers, or from the gentry. I believe, because we are still okay with one of those bills, that I'm going to go for another hobnob action before I do anything else, because again we are okay, we are tied right now on the election projection. Still, this will change, rest assured. So I guess let's go for another hobnob action for this round, right? Yeah, let's do that. So we are drawing 1 card here, William Booth, okay, and another supporter here, which, well, Florence Nightingale. Oh, I really love the whole historical characters here. So we have the founder of the Salvation Army and, of course, the founder of nursing. He gives us 1 in F at the farmers, which is not bad, or 1 with the workers, which I think, yeah, it's basically both step of 2. The farmers could give us some leeway towards future partisans. Again, typically the partisans builds are the powerful ones that really give us a whole lot of victory points. Or we have again Florence Nightingale, which would also drive up the middle class, or we can decide to drive down the workers for any one of our opponents, in this case the Liberal Party. Workers, I think both of them give us 2 steps right now, 2 vote projections. I will show you how this works. The farmers, but again, the farmers are cool because we are driving up the partisans. So maybe we should be going with William Booth. So sorry again, we can't go with Florence Nightingale. Again, on the other hand, the workers. The workers are also cool because, no, we don't care about the partisans for our Liberal Party because, again, once they get in control, we have lost the game anyway. So, unfortunately, Florence Nightingale, we have to stick to William Booth, unfortunately. And I think from a conservative perspective, thematically, it feels it makes sense. It may not be the right thing to do, but it feels somehow fitting, right? I hope you know what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, let's hold on to William Booth, and that's basically the end of the action turns. I could play these supporters right away, and again, our carryover limit is 4. We are under it, so that's not a problem. And I think right now, let's try to hold on to those, and then we have to resolve a bill. We as the Prime Minister get to choose which of these bills we are trying to resolve, and we can, let's call it, resolve them in one of 2 ways. We can either really bring them out for a vote, or we can say, let's cancel. In this case, we will lose some standing, but we're not losing the full impact. If you're really going for the vote and then losing to pass that bill, basically, then your penalty is typically bigger than that. So I think, let's see. That's down here. So if we are trying to pass that bill and we are failing, we will lose 2 standing. Our opponent is gaining 2 standing. So that's a swing of 2. Whereas when we simply withdraw a bill, we are giving our opponent 2 victory points. Again, it doesn't matter in this mode of the game. But the standing swing would only be 2 in total. So I think if you really think we can't make it, it's very ultra close, for example, then you can always withdraw it. But in one of 2 ways, you have to deal with a bill each round. Of course, we have one sure thing out right now, which I believe is the Weights and Measures Act. We are at 360 and there are no uncertainty cards whatsoever that will drive this from 360 votes down to or below 330. That's the number, the magic number that you have to me, which in this case, you see that here for 340, it's a 5 of 6 chance to succeed. As of 350, you will automatically pass that bill. So we are not drawing any uncertainty cards in this case, right? So of course, we are going for the Weights and Measures Act because it's a safe bet, and that's something that you have to pick some of these safe backs early on. Maybe I should really have gone for a 3rd conservative bill instead here, but I was getting too greedy, it seems. So ultimately, only thing that this one does, giving both of us, the Liberal and the Conservative Party, 2 victory points. Again, the victory points for the Liberal Party do not matter. They're just here to give us an idea of how good or bad we are doing here. Because this bill has passed, we are not putting it into the discard pile. It's basically removed from the game, but I think I will stand it next to our player mat so we know that we were successful. It's some kind of a history of things that we were able to achieve, even though that was a very, very simple one. So we are bringing down the marker here, and we are not redrawing these bills. We are only doing the build selection process when this board is empty. So basically after the next election or so, we can still postpone an election, by the way, at least once. During these times you could still do that. And then I guess that's pretty much the end of the round. Now we would be checking if there would be no more bills here. We would now go into an election. We still have 2 more bills here, which means we are starting our next round of the game. Again, we will have a look at the parliamentary order. Now we are in the first normal round of the game, so we are getting 4 victory points for being the Prime Minister, and what an awesome Prime Minister we are. And our opposition leader gains 2 victory points. And then again, we will take our action cube income, which is still 3 for us and 2 for Rosebery. But let's not forget about those victory points here. So we are already at 6 out of 100. Hooray! Again, we are starting with Rosebery, the opposition leader. He is again trying to go with a flatter action because he's still within, it's not a futile action for him, because it's only futile if it would be 3 or more. So in this case he will gain 1, 2 more influence with the queen, and there is no such effect when you are going beyond 8 or dropping below 0. You would never drop below that. It's simply then also very futile basically. That was the first cube, and then for the second cube things get a little bit more interesting, and this is maybe something where I should have started to play the game a little bit more, but yeah, that's too late. So now again his first choice would be to go against a bill of us, but again he's looking at the attack range of 300 to 350, and right now both of our builds are just below that threshold, which means he's not targeting any one of our builds, which means his next option would be to increase the liberals. That's exactly what he's doing. So he's increasing his influence with the liberals. So he's moving from 6 to 8, which is then also changing the election projections. Only one of the parties can be on the board. Everything else will be, let's say, mathed out by deltas. Let's put it like this, because they just gained 2 steps. So basically from 6 to 8 we are moving the liberal marker from 0, from the tied position, to 2. So right now if we would hold an election, the projections say that 333 seats would go to the Liberal Party and only 325 would go to us. 329 is the magical threshold. So I think we have 658 seats in the House of Commons from what I understood. So right now we would be losing. We would still be drawing an uncertainty card, and there are plus 12s in there, so we could still win it, but it's definitely very difficult from here. So we really have to actively work towards that or against that. But that's basically the end of his action phase. So we are moving back to us. First thing as Prime Minister we have to do, we have to deal with an event, and here we have landlords abuse Irish farmers. This can't be good, right? And that's really a nasty one. So we can simply ignore that. Then we would lose influence with Ireland and the farmers. Both not very happy with us. We can consult Irish peers, which would at least not make us some ill effects with the Irish, but the farmers wouldn't be too pleased about this. Or we can launch a full-blown investigation by spending 2 of our action cubes, but then our the farmers would go up by 1, which would give us 2 votes, I believe. So we would be tied again on the election projection, which is not a bad thing. So I think in this case, let's do that. So we are launching an investigation. Not sure if that's a good idea or not, but I still feel we should go to the bottom of things in this case. So our influence with the farmers, unfortunately not with the Irish, only with the farmers, will go up 1 step. So we are moving from 5 to 7, and because we are only looking at deltas here, we are moving this marker back down to 0. No 2 markers can be on the election projections here. So right now we are tied again because we have, I think, appropriately dealt with the landlords abuse Irish farmers. How could they? The main problem is that we are now out of cubes, and I think there's really not an awful lot we can do right now to make any one of those builds pass this round. So I think we have to forfeit one of those. So again, I think it was a bad idea going for a conservative build with round 1, quite honestly. Okay, lesson learned here. So I think we are giving up maybe on this one, because this one could still really significantly help us. So maybe with the next round we have to go all in on influencing the moderates or so. Not influencing the moderates or working with them or debate with them, because we would gain in total 3 steps up, which could be quite a lot actually. But this also means I could consider now to go again for a hobnob action and really hope, because there are really also other effects other than just influence from what I understand. So let's spend that and let's go. I mean, this is our strength, right? The strength of our backup Prime Minister, by the way, is the flatter action. So he can more or less counter all the activities that Rosebery's doing. So let's see. We are drawing 2 of these supporters. So that's the first one, Cardinal Newman, Catholic prelate. Okay, what role does he play? Not sure if there is a backstory for these characters here. Maybe I need to check Wikipedia. But okay, so either the Irish go up or the moderates go up. No, the middle class goes up, not moderates. Middle class goes up. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, we can use those guys. Oh, that's nice. We have the Earl of Ilsley, who happens to be an influential peer, and he could help us with a bill by +1. I think that would be quite nice, actually. I think that could be quite nice. So in this case, yeah, Cardinal Newman, you have to go. Unfortunately, we will hold on to you. But I believe that's already the end of the round. Again, we have to resolve a bill. And because there's no chance that we are going to make it here, we have to forfeit or withdraw the Royal Titles Act. Which again means, let's flip it over. The opposition will gain 2 victory points, but we are losing 1 influence and our opposition gains 1 influence. Again, the victory points do not matter at all, but we are losing 1 and he's gaining 1. And again, keep in mind, we are being challenged, successfully challenged, if the influence is, the standing is the same, and if he happens to have, I believe, more favor than we do. And I think he will always have more favor. He's flattering the queen all the time right now. So there's a good chance that we might be losing the game through a challenge phase. Good thing is we can always back out and bring our backup Earl of Aberdeen into the play, which would then reset our influence to 11. We would still lose some other stuff from what I have seen, but yeah. Might be still just to keep us alive for another round or so. Okay, the Royal Titles Act is discarded. Now we would come into the challenge phase. I should have mentioned that during the last round. And now we would check if there are still bills out. There are bills out, which means we are not triggering an election right now. So we are basically moving into the next round of the game. Again, we are gaining 1, 2, 3, 4 victory points because we are still Prime Minister. Hooray! Opposition leader gets 2 victory points in this case. And then we are gaining our action cube income. That's still 3 for us, 2 for the opposition. And again, we are starting with Rosebery. So his first cube will be this. Right now, this action is futile for him because he already has a strong lead with Her Royal Majesty. So we are not doing this. Next, he would influence our bill. He's not going to do that because, again, both of our bills are outside of his attack range. This behavior will change, by the way, I believe as soon as we reach 90 victory points down here. Exactly. Then I think he's still targeting like crazy. So he's not going to do that. Next, yeah, he will... That's a bad thing actually. So he will increase his influence with the liberal sector then, which increases this to 11. Oh, this could be now really bad actually. Oh, this could be ultra bad. So he's gaining 3 votes in the thing here. 1, 2, 3 in the election projection. And depending on what event we are drawing, this could be really an ultra bad thing. So there could be some very special, what was it, interim elections or so, basically, where we are filling seats that are being open because of death or whatever. In that case, we could be really losing some stuff. Yeah, that would be bad, actually. That would be really bad. But still, that was his first action to drive up the Liberal Party. And the problem is he will do that again now with his second action cube. He can't do this, or he won't do this, so he will do that again. Next step would be the gentry. And he would skip that if he would be already maxed out on the Liberal sector, for example. But this is now really bad, so he's moving up here. So that's gaining him 3 more votes here. 1, 2 and 3. So right now the projections are 340 against us basically. So he's really doing particularly well actually. Nicely done. These were his 2 actions, and now it really all depends on the event we are drawing actually. But either way, I do think we have to work for this one here. The problem is we could gain a +40 basically, so giving us a 1 and 2 chance to pass that bill, and I think we have to try that at least. I mean, we have some good supporters here. We can even draw 1 more. Let's see how things go. But again, we have to go with an event. Okay, it's a normal event, which could be good or bad. So it's a Prince of Wales caught in scandal, and if my The Crown and Downton Abbey serves me well. Knowledge serves me well. This is the Crown Prince. I don't know. We can ignore that. So we will drop one with our favor, which is, I think, not the end of the world. We can advise Her Majesty, so at least our... Okay, she will be happy. Or we can shift the blame towards the opposition, basically. So they would be losing one favor with Her Majesty, which wouldn't really gain us something because he would still be at 3 or higher. I would do that if that would drive him down basically to gain more influence with the favor track actually. But in this case, this step doesn't really help us. I'm really now thinking about simply ignoring that. I can't spend 2 here because then I will be, I think I have to take the risk. Yeah, I think I have to. So we are basically ignoring that. I think a pretty bad move for a Conservative party. Of course, Her Royal Majesty is not amused, and I think we are really, I'm playing very poorly here. And we are losing 1 influence with the middle class, which is 2 more steps for our opponent here. Okay, that was tough. Really, really tough. So, but yeah, we have somehow, quote unquote, dealt with this event in a very poor manner, actually. So I think... I'm really tempted now to go with another supporter, but the thing is, even a supporter, it seems, only gives us +10. There could be stronger ones, and I think this is where knowing the deck, at least to some extent, would definitely help you. But for me, it's also another learning game. Let's take it like this. So I'm really now tempted to go with 3 debate actions here to drive up this thing. I think this bill, yeah, is gone basically, so we have withdrawn that. So if we would do that 3 times, we would be moving 1, 2, 3. That would be 1 in 6 chance. And if we would then also play our Earl of Iddlesley, we would be bringing it to 330. 1 in 2 chances, which again is not terrible. And then we still have to think about using more characters because we know we will have more builds coming out relatively soon. I will definitely postpone the election, that much is clear, because we will lose. That's really clear, because we can't really win. So in this case, yeah, let's simply spend all 3 of our cubes to debate. We can debate, yes we can. It would be really cool to have a character who had debate for 2, then we would be driving this up 20 points for each cube. Again, I still think the Hobnob is also very powerful depending on what you are drawing, but I think in this case let's do it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So we debated like crazy. We will use the influence of Earl of Iddlesley to bring this up 1 more. Yeah, exactly, that's this one. So this guy is, I think, discarded, so he could come back. Can't quite remember actually. And then we could still play more supporters, right, just to prepare for the election. But I don't think that we will be seeing an election this round, so I can still hold on to that. Now the Liberals down by 1, that's not bad, because they would be losing 3 votes pretty much. So the author could really write something very evil against the Liberal Party, it seems. That's the thing. I think let's not do it just now. No, I think we are passing now, so we are not using any more actions, supporter actions or whatnot. We are going to resolve a bill. The only bill that is left is the Ground Game Act. Again, we are currently at 330, which means we are drawing our very first uncertainty card. And this one says, I think that's a 0. I think we are looking, yeah, we are looking for the top one. This is for the election. This symbol is for bills. It's a 0, and because we are at 330, we have made it. Oh, that was amazing. We were so incredibly lucky. So both of us will now gain the 3 victory points, which of course is good. Again, our goal is 100 victory points. But I think what's really more important now are these effects down here. The farmers will go up 2 levels and the workers will go up 1 level. Nice. So here we have the farmers. So we are moving from 7 to 11. That's a vote swing of 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we are back to our first, let's say, election projection column here, category. Nice. But the workers will also go up by 1. So we are moving 2 more, which means this one is moving 1, 2 steps more down. So now it really does start to make sense. Yeah, and if I would have known, maybe I should have played it this way. I could have played these cards here in order to drive things down even further, though I could be actually in the lead. Oh, that really did work out to be okay. But I think there's no need right now to hold an election. So this uncertainty card is gone. This was a good one actually. So the Ground Game Act is something that we were able to bring into effect. Now again, we are checking, are there any bills out? The answer is not. So in theory, we would have now to hold an election. But because we still have that marker here, this allows us to postpone the election by basically 1 more cycle. Of course, again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. First of all, we would check for the challenge, but right now our influence or our standing is still 10. His standing is at 6, so we are doing okay. I think we have gotten rid of these cubes. Now we would check for the election, but again, we already dealt with that, so we are not doing any election. But the next time we are removing 3 of these bills, then we would have to hold an election because the marker is done. From what I know, there is no way to bringing it back other than really holding an election. Once we hold the election, marker goes back, then again I can postpone it 1 more time. But I think in this case, this was certainly worth it. This really went very, very well in the end. Nice. So we would go into the next round, but I think for today I will call it. So let me know what you think. Definitely let me know what you think I should be doing next. Ultimately, I think things are working okay-ish. Depends now a little bit on the events we are drawing and whatnot, but we have still some very good supporters with us who could still help us, and I think we will definitely work with those. We can also now select in the next round 3 more builds, which should be able to help us, and I think I will try to follow a similar logic, getting at least 2 cross-party builds out here and maybe 1 conservative build, or maybe I will chicken out and will completely focus on cross-party builds for now until I have, let's say, a somewhat more stronger lead. Really looking forward to my next episode of my playthrough of Prime Minister here. This game really is a ton of fun. It's very straightforward, relatively easy to play. With the multiplayer mode, from what I could read, yes, there are definitely more facets to the game, because especially when you're playing a 4-player game, for example, you always have a backbench, for example, role. You're also actively playing as the opposition, as the Prime Minister. You have definitely way more things that you are able to see. You have some career cards and whatnot. So definitely a lot more going on. You can do pacts and all sorts of stuff. Really driving this to actual political game. In this case, it's more mechanical, but still is already a ton of fun, and it gives you a good idea. I think this is easily 80-85% of the multiplayer rules that you are seeing here. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. And yeah, until then, bye bye.